Okay, now we're going to create the invoker and test out our command design pattern implementation. And we've created the receivers, we've created the commands. Now it's time to create the invoker and test it out. Invoker is going to load in, you're going to load the commands into the invoker and then run the commands by using the invoker's run method. So let's see how that works. Here's the class. I'm going to call it invoker. And you might actually think that you don't need an invoker, and that is true to some extent. You could just load your commands into the client code and run them, but the design pattern, the command design pattern says you should have an invoker, and so we're going to do that here. I create an invoker class. It's going to have an empty constructor, as you see there. And the invoker is going to have two methods that you can access publicly, and one is going to be the setCommand method. It's going to take a command object, and the command object is going to be stored internally as just using the variable named command. Then we're going to run that command. As you recall, the command, all commands have an execute method to actually run them, and we're going to run that command using the run method. So the run method of the invoker is going to actually run the command. You can set the command to invoke with the setCommand method. Okay, so that is the invoker class. It's got a public constructor, a setCommand command that you pass the command to, you want to run to, and then a run method that will invoke the command, that will execute the command like that, as you see there. Okay, so now I'm going to test out a command design pattern example in a program called test commands, and the test commands constructor is going to do the work. We're going to create a new invoker, just called the invoker object. I'm going to create the three receivers. As you recall, we created these three classes earlier on: Asia server, Euro server, US server. Now we're going to create objects using those classes: Asia server, Euro server, US server. That creates the receivers. Now we're going to create the commands that you can use with those receivers. As you recall, you pass the actual objects corresponding to the receivers into the constructor of the command classes. For example, to create a shutdown command, you can pass a receiver object to that shutdown command. In this case, you're passing the Asia server command object, and that means you're going to create a command object called shutdown Asia. Okay, and then you can create a run diagnostics command, passing again the Asia server to it, and it's going to be called run diagnostics Asia. And a reboot command as well, reboot Asia, is going to be passed the Asia server object. Now that creates these three objects, all having to do with Asia. These are the three command objects you're going to be using. They're each tools that can be loaded into the invoker. And next, you create the corresponding objects for the Euro servers. You pass the shutdown command constructor, Euro server object. The receiver is going to be the Euro server, and that makes a shutdown Euro command. Passing the Euro server to receiver to the run diagnostics command classes constructor, you get a run diagnostics Euro object. And so reboot Euro, and then shutdown US command is created as well. The run diagnostics US command, or reboot US command is created as well. Okay, so now we're going to actually use the invoker object which we've created. As you recall from up here, that was the first thing that was done. And then we created the receivers, then we created the commands. Now we're going to actually load a command into the invoker. Do that with its setCommand method. And you say setCommand, and for example, you might want to run the shutdown Asia command. You say invoker.setCommand shutdown Asia. That loads the command object, the tool, from your tool set into the invoker, and then you run that command like that. Next, we're going to reboot Asia. So we're going to shut down Asia, reboot the Asia server, run the diagnostics on the Asia server. I'm going to try shutting down the Euro server, and then running diagnostics on the Euro server. And in each case, you load the command object, which has been pre-configured to call multiple methods inside the actual receiver, into the invoker. You load it into the invoker. We're using a method called setCommand here, and then using the invoker's run method to actually execute the command, which will call multiple methods in the receiver. So that's it. That's the example, and it's in a file called, an application called test commands. Let's see whether or not this is going to do what we think. And here it is. We're about to execute it. Java test commands. And you're connected to the Asia server, shutting down the Asia server. You're disconnected from the Asia server, so that was a shutdown command which executed 3 different methods in the Asia server. So as you see from all these, you're going to be working with various commands and executing those commands, and you have put multiple methods calls into each command object and then executed that command on the receiver. So that's the idea behind this particular design pattern, the command design pattern, which is to execute multiple method calls on the receiver and put those together, encapsulate those calls together into one command object, easily loaded into the invoker and then executed by the invoker, and helps you keep things straight. So that is the command design pattern.